The Carl H. Linder College of Business, the University of Cincinnati, and the greater Cincinnati business community, along with other stakeholders, have combined to create a thriving analytics hub. My name is Grant Freaking, Manager of College Communications and Marketing at Linder. On this episode of Bearcats Mean Business, I'm joined by Dr. Dungang Liu, Professor of Business Analytics and Academic Director for the Center for Business Analytics, and Matthew Dowling, Divisional Assistant Vice President, Business Data and Analytics, Great American Insurance. We'll be chatting about the Center for Business Analytics series, Analytics Without Borders, Cincinnati as a Center for Analytics, and more. Welcome, Dungang and Matthew.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thanks again for both of you being here. Matthew, you're a Linder graduate. Any fond memories being back in this area? I know the building was not quite built when you graduated here, but how's it feel being back?
Oh, it's great to be back. And I'm lucky enough to come back pretty frequently. I get to work with Dungang and the Center for Business Analytics. I spend a number of days every year in the 1819 building working on innovative strategy for Great American Business Data and Analytics. Mm-hmm. And I also spend some of my weekends in the fall here going to football games and other academic and athletic activities here.
Awesome. Gentlemen, let's share with listeners a bit more about your backgrounds and how you ended up in your respective positions. Dungang, lead us off.
Yes, so it has been a long journey. So I got my PhD in statistics when data science was still a buzzword. So when I say this, I feel I'm getting old. And I had 2 years after that. I had 2 years postdoc experience at Yale University. I really, really appreciate that experience because it gave me exposure to a lot of real and exciting problems. And I think that's the reason I'm here. And after that, I joined UC Linder College of Business as assistant professor and in the major of business analytics. And I'm now a full professor and serve as the academic director for the Center for Business Analytics. So when I introduce myself, when I talk about my background to my students, I always say life is like a box of chocolates. You never know where you're going to get.
Forrest Gump. Matthew?
Sure. So I have my bachelor's degree in finance and accounting from the University of Cincinnati. I took my first job as an accountant, but back then accountant was a lot more broad than accountant is now. Okay. We didn't exactly have data and analytics positions. So I was doing a lot of data and analytics as an accountant.
Okay.
I then proceeded to get my MBA in business intelligence from Xavier. That was back when business intelligence was a little bit more encompassing than it is today. When we say business intelligence now, we may be talking specifically about visualization, but back then it incorporated a lot of what we call data science, and statistics and business intelligence was sort of coming together at that point. I've worked in quite a few insurance functions throughout my career until I was picked to lead our enterprise analytics group.
Okay.
Our enterprise, and I work primarily on strategy, and I also lead a team of folks that work on some data science and a lot of visualization.
Sure. And you mentioned you studied accounting and finance here at Linder. How did that form the foundation of your business career?
Sure. So accounting and finance may not be as quantitative as statistics, but it's still a quantitative practice, and so that certainly helped. But overall, the Linder College of Business helped me grow a lot of connections and friendships. I think the leadership opportunities around campus were really helpful for me. I was in club sports leadership when I was at the university. And then finally, the university really invests in practical application of our studies. So Dungang's going to talk about it a little bit later, but with Analytics Without Borders, which wasn't around when I was going here, but that same concept was around. And then co-op, the university is a leader in co-op, and that is really helpful in kind of bridging the gap between your studies and your professional experience in practical applications.
All right. Now, one of the reasons why we're here today is Analytics Without Borders, as Matthew just mentioned. The Center for Business Analytics series that has educated Linder and UC students, staff, and faculty, as well as working professionals on a range of topics, including generative AI, human capital analytics, marketing analytics, and transfer learning for AI. Dungang, tell us a little bit more about the origin and rationale of Analytics Without Borders.
Sure. So the motive originates from a question. So I'm asking myself, what is analytics? Of course, different people may have different answers. So I believe analytics is such a broad field that you may not give a definite answer to this question. But my understanding is analytics has at least three pillars. Mm-hmm. The first one is statistics, machine learning, and optimization. So basically, these are all the techniques that lay the foundation of analytics. So we cannot do any analytics without all these techniques. But at the same time, we cannot do analytics without domain questions. I think that is the second pillar of analytics. So we need to have domain knowledge, we need to have domain questions, domain experts. And if we create a conversation between these two pillars, right, statistics, machine learning, optimization, and also the people who have expertise and also questions from the domain part, we have the third pillar, is called applications. And I think ChatGPT is a great example, right? You have large language models, but I can see that in the next few years, we are going to have a lot of apps and the B2B solutions that is built on these techniques that create a lot of opportunities. So analytics is area that cause collaborations across different disciplines. But based on my own experience, I have attended so many academic conferences and also industry conferences. Mm-hmm. What I see is communication is an issue, right? So the reason that people may not get together from different disciplines is we may not speak the same language. So if you think about the term business analytics, it has two words in there. So you have business, you have analytics. So I think we have to do translations. So we translate business problem to an analytics problem. So some people with statistics, machine learning background can solve that, but in the end, you have to translate back the result produced by Python, Power BI, right, back to business. So you always have to do this kind of translation. But it's very, very hard to build that capability across different disciplines. So our approach is to start with light-hearted conversations. So this series is different from traditional seminar where you have this one-way communication, right? You watch YouTube videos, you can take some Coursera courses, or you watch Netflix documentaries. They're great, but it's just one-way communication. So the audience has no way to get involved. So that's part of the motive we do this. And in Analytics Without Borders, we try to create multi-way conversations in the sense that we create conversations between different speakers. So typically we have 2 to 3 speakers from different disciplines in every event. And at the same time, we want to create conversations between the audience and the speakers using a tool is called the Mentimeter. So basically our audience can ask any questions at any time. So I think that's the differentiator of our series. And if you ask me to summarize the motive in just one sentence, I would say Analytics Without Borders is an experiment in which we want to engage cross-discipline experts as well as cross-section audience, including students, faculty, professionals, and at the same time, we want to ensure that a freshman in a non-STEM field can understand.
All right. Now, something that struck me while attending the most recent Analytics Without Borders was the diversity of interests represented. Dungang, you had attendees state their area of interest or study that appeared into a word cloud. And among the responses were some of the typical ones you would expect: information systems, business analytics, operations management, majors or fields that you'd expect to be associated with analytics. But also represented were marketing, sociology, kinesiology, and other areas of study not traditionally grouped with analytics. What can you say about that, the diversity of interest represented and the audience that you've managed to sort of group into a single setting?
Yeah, I have been amazed by the diversity of the audience, but I'm not surprised. Mm-hmm. So this goes back to my own background. So my major was in mathematics, and I did statistics, biostatistics, now business analytics. And I because I teach, right, I ask students a lot of questions. to motivate them. And because I'm teaching a course in the first semester, I often ask them a question, say, hey, tell me what is the common thing behind all these different fields. You have mathematics, statistics, biostatistics, business analytics. And 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, students were not able to figure out. They think, I give them some hint, and eventually say, hey, this is data. But it's pretty interesting, like since last year, many students can immediately say it is a data. So data is the common ground across different disciplines. And I think no matter what discipline you're working, I think people now have the mindset, hey, how can we use data to solve our problems?
Right.
I think that's the reason we bring people together to this analytics without borders. And this is another motive behind this series. So we want to bring people with diverse background together. And we do observe that the diversity produce eye-opening conversations. So I said conversation. It's not traditional seminar, it's conversations. And I still remember one conversation I had with the audience. It was 2 months after the ChatGPT was launched online. So I asked them a question, hey, tell me, do we, as humans, do we have any strengths that ChatGPT does not have? And you can imagine, wow, this audience threw out all these kind of different answers to the screen, right? We produced that in a word cloud. And I still remember vividly there are 2 answers. One is arms. One is arms, yeah.
True.
So, yeah, that is true. You say that is true, right? But I think this person may not mean the physical arm. Physical arm is a differentiator, right? That means if I have physical arms, I can give you a handshake, I can hug Matt sitting beside me, right? But I think that hug or handshake means something more than a physical activity. It is a gesture. It is a willingness to make a connection. And this is something that ChatGPT may not have. And the other answer is heart. That's right. That's true, right? But again, I think this person means something beyond that physical heart. So we humans may do something that may harm our interest, but we may still want to do that because of our beliefs or moral standard. So I think this is something that is really, really interesting.
All right. Matthew, what does this intersection mean to you now as a sort of, now that you're well-versed in your field and you've attended some Analytics Without Borders yourself?
Sure. So I think it represents a continued commitment by the university to practically apply the studies that Dungang and his colleagues do here at the university. I think these cross-field studies really enable somebody who is in industry to kind of see and think about things a lot broader than they would in their day-to-day job. So I think it's really helpful in developing strategy, in understanding what is next for your industry based on some of the leaders in other industries.
And building off that, tell us a little bit more about your role with Great American and the company's relationship with analytics and how that's maybe evolved since you've been with Great American.
Sure. So Great American is primarily a specialty property and casualty insurance company. And insurance is full of data, but that data isn't always organized in the right way. So in some ways, we saw the opportunity as an industry to utilize our data very early. And actuarial as a science is a great example of how we've done that. But because of the fact that our data is not always organized appropriately for analysis, we only went, an inch deep for decades in data and analytics. But over the past 10 to 15 years, insurance has become a whole lot more data focused across the industry, and Great American has been a leader in that area. So currently we're doing all of the interesting work with AI, machine learning, natural language processing, advanced visualizations. We use a lot of the same we use a lot of the same tech and a lot of the same techniques as startups, but we have 151 years behind us in terms of stability. We have great benefits, excellent work-life balance, and we have a lot of continuing education opportunities, including our partnership with the Center for Business Analytics. And above all, we like to apply what we know and what we've learned in an ethical way. Dungang mentioned that there's a lot that humans have that machines do not have. Some of that is heart. Some of that is that ethical foundation that's really hard to build into your machine learning and into your AI. We are very intentional about being ethical with our application of data science.
Yeah. Let's focus a bit more on Cincinnati itself, the city, and the area around it as a hub for business and analytics. Dungang, you're not from here originally, but you've lived here for over a decade now. Matthew, we were talking before the show started. You're born and raised Cincinnati, and like myself, I'm interested in both of your perspectives on this topic. Dungang, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked this question. So I was not born here, and I did not grow up here, but I want to speak strongly for Cincinnati. So I grew up in a popular city in China. So at that time, the population was probably 5 million. Now it's approaching 8 million.
Wow.
And I spent 7 years on the East Coast in New Jersey and Connecticut. I would say both my wife and I love Cincinnati. We truly love Cincinnati, and we think this is our hometown. And in May, actually, I went back to my hometown because my mother-in-law had a surgery. And we spent 2 weeks in our hometown. And in the last 3 days, I really miss Cincinnati. So I want to come back. So I think we should redefine. Actually, I searched the definition of hometown. I think we should redefine the definition of hometown. It's a place you want to go back when you feel tired and lonely. It's not a place you were born or grew up. It's something you really miss. And I think we have everything here. We have football, we have soccer, we have baseball teams. And if you love tennis, you can watch Cincinnati Open every August. The tickets are much cheaper as compared to US Open, right? So, but basically you see all the players, right? And Kings Island, I live in Mason, and Kings Island is just 5 minutes away from my home. I think that's fantastic. If you like music, we have Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra. And if you like Broadway shows, you can still watch in Cincinnati. I think unless you want to watch Broadway shows every week, probably there is no difference as compared to living in New York City. So I think Cincinnati have everything that it can offer.
Matthew, let's hear your pitch for Cincinnati.
I think Cincinnati is a great place to live. It has, as Dungang said, almost all of the benefits of a larger city without the traffic and the high cost. We have the arts, as Dungang was saying, with the symphony, with the May Choral Festival, with a number of other shows. We have the entertainment with sports. And what Dungang didn't mention in terms of our national presence, but I really enjoyed this year, was the LPGA Queen City. And it's presented by some of our fabulous companies here in Cincinnati. Cincinnati companies really invest in Cincinnati, and it shows with things like the Cincinnati Open and the LPGA Queen City. It's a great place to do business. We have great corporations with a rich history that work together really, really well. We have our innovation district. We have a number of incubators, including probably the strongest in 1819, of which Great American Insurance is a member. And our business leaders are advocates for the Cincinnati area. The Lindners have invested so much in the Cincinnati area, and John Barrett, who was a key member in keeping that Cincinnati Open in Cincinnati, has done so much to grow the business community here in Cincinnati. The hospital system is wonderful, including the best children's hospital in the country. We have extremely strong universities led by the University of Cincinnati. And, you think, okay, what does Cincinnati and how great Cincinnati is have to do with analytics without borders? But I really think that with so many national and international companies in Cincinnati, there are Bearcats around the world. And it's important that we stay connected. And I think Analytics Without Borders and the university really act as that glue to keep us connected. With everything that Cincinnati and the university has to offer, it makes sense to have Cincinnati at the center.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Dungang, we talked a little bit beforehand about the Center for Business Analytics and the need for some student leaders to sort of help drive the center forward. Can you tell me about and tell the audience about what you're looking for in those student leaders?
Yes. So in the past, our center have involved students in different company projects. But for Analytics Without Borders, we are looking for student leaders. It's not just the doers, but we want students with vision, with passion, with the willingness to contribute, to lead, to promote other students. And I'm looking forward to working with someone who wants to drive this Analytics Without Borders further.
Awesome. Well, thanks to Dungang and Matthew for joining me today. Appreciate you guys coming on the podcast.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Grant.
My thanks to Dungang and Matthew for joining me on Bearcats Mean Business. Please join us at the next Analytics Without Borders, slated for Wednesday, November 6th at 3:30 p.m. at Linder Hall. The keynote speaker will be Dr. Denny Zhou, founder and leader of the LLM reasoning team in Google DeepMind. The event will be live streamed so Bearcats can watch from wherever they are. Are you interested in studying analytics? U.S. News & World Report recently ranked Linder's undergraduate business analytics program among the top 25 programs in the country. Please find out more information at business.uc.edu. Please subscribe, rate, and review Bearcats Mean Business wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. Go Bearcats.